back. They are the most talked about family in the world. And even though so much is said about the royal family, we don't actually know what exactly goes on behind closed doors. Our next guest is about to change that.
Oh boy, is she ever. Tina Brown has been observing and chronicling the British family for 3 decades, and now she's revealing explosive details in her new book, The Palace Papers, Inside the House of Windsor, The Truth and the Turmoil. And we are absolutely thrilled. I don't know how I'm staying in my seat right now. Award-winning writer, journalist, royal expert, Tina Brown is in studio. Welcome.
Good to see you guys.
Oh, gosh. So listen, I devoured your book. It just was such a satisfying read, and that is just to put it lightly. But let's go into how you put this together. And you interviewed over 120 people, many of which were very, very close to the senior royals. And the book picks up where the Diana Chronicles end. And you say, quote, "I don't subscribe to the now pervasive narrative that Diana was a vulnerable victim of media manipulation." So let's pick up there. And what did you mean by that?
I mean that in the last, and it's so great to be with you. I do wish this pink had been better chosen compared to that crazy, fabulous colour. I meant that really that in the last few years, particularly, the whole kind of Diana story has become about her being a complete victim in every way. Of course, she was a horrible victim, at the end of her life. But, she was a much more savvy, astute, sophisticated, clever woman than, in a way, she's being given credit for, right? I mean, the point about Diana, she didn't stay the innocent babe that she was at the beginning of the story, right? And people tend to think she sort of stayed the innocent babe. But, she was much more interesting than that. And I knew her, and she was, she knew what she was doing a great deal of the time. So that was the point I was trying to make, that in some ways, I said about the brothers that, that Harry was 12 when she died. So he really idolized her more and understood her less. William, who was 2 years older, idolized her a bit less, but understood her more. And that's the kind of difference in the dynamic between the brothers.
And you had lunch with Diana 6 weeks before she died, and also Anna Wintour.
Yes.
What was said in that lunch?
Well, the lunch was because she was in town, Diana, for the charity auction of her dresses, right? And she invited us to lunch, which is part of what I mean about being savvy. We were 2 editors. I was editor of The New Yorker and of Vogue, so 2 in 1, right? She was so ravishing in real life, so much more beautiful than in pictures, because she had this incredible peachy skin. And, of course, she was very tall, which you don't really so much see in pictures. But she had this supermodel height, And she came striding into the Four Seasons restaurant on this little, jade green Saint Laurent mini suit, with these legs, like long legs, this blonde hair, these enormous eyes. And I'm telling you, the whole restaurant just like completely, breathtaking. They found her. And during the lunch, she was very moving about how much she regretted, the whole collapse of her marriage, and how she felt very much alone when her boys went off to Balmoral in the summer. And this was in July of '97, of course, 6 weeks before she died. And I said to her, how can you feel alone? She said, I have nowhere to go on vacation. I said, how could that be? You're the most popular woman in the world. She said, to have me to stay is really difficult. She said, if people go on their summer vacations in August, they don't want someone who they're going to have paparazzi outside the door all the time, pouring through their trash and, disrupting their vacation and making things impossible. She said, so I'm very much alone and I don't know what I'm going to do. And I thought about that, of course, when she died in the car crash in Paris, because I don't think she would have ever gone on that vacation with the Alfayeds on the boat in Saint-Tropez and all that if she had had a family life. So it was very moving. But at the same time, she was also very canny about what she wanted to do. She said, I want to create these TV shows that will be based on my causes, and then I can amplify the causes by having, an arrangement with a TV network. And she basically outlined all the same kind of ideas that Harry and Meghan are doing now, except that in her case, it was all about charity. It wasn't going to be for money. And that was a critical difference, really.
The other area, we have so much to get to, my goodness. The other area that you do not hold back on in the book is when it comes to perhaps the royal family's most controversial member, and that is Prince Andrew. And the story that really stands out to me in the book is where you describe there was a lunch that was happening between an American media executive and Sarah Ferguson. Andrew arrives and you reveal some of the shocking details of things that were said at that meeting. Can you explain a little bit of that story?
Yeah, he said to this media executive who told me, like, why are you meeting with this fat cow, he said. He's like, what? You know, we keep hearing that they've had this sort of unbroken bond. But it really shows, actually, I mean, poor Sarah, who actually I think is a very, very warm and decent woman, really. Andrew was an oaf. You know, Andrew is extraordinarily rude to people, insensitive people, bad to staff, you know, privileged. He's all the things that you kind of think a privileged, you know, a prince without any inhibitions is. And he was that guy and is that guy. And what they're going to do with him now is a question mark, right? I mean, he's been completely cancelled and banished. But how do you stash away a healthy 61-year-old you know, very noisy man who lives in a house in Windsor Great Park, 5 minutes from Windsor Castle, and who doesn't wish to be cancelled and was going to try to get his face back into public life in any way that he can. So that's going to be a very interesting, ongoing issue, how to deal with Andrew.
Well, and speaking of his face in the public eye, Prince Andrew ensured he was in the spotlight at Prince Philip's memorial service when he escorted his mother to the seat in Westminster Abbey. So do you think the Queen is going to involve Prince Andrew in her Jubilee celebrations?
I don't think the family at this point is going to let her do that. I mean, this was a very sad moment, really, when it was such a bad optics to have Andrew in that moment, because it meant that instead of everybody talking about Prince Philip, you know, who it was all about that day, everything was about what is Andrew doing here, you know? But actually, you know, I was told that he was not supposed to escort her down the aisle, that, you know, when he got to the place of worship, she was supposed to be escorted by the dean, you know, who was in charge that day, and instead of which Andrew just muscled him out the way and went forth. And, you know, the Queen isn't going to have, what, an altercation on the in the aisle of a church? No way. I mean, she was escorted there and perhaps feels at this point in her life she is beyond, you know, honestly minding what people really say. But I thought it was unfortunate optics, and certainly Charles and William were very, very unhappy about it and determined it would not happen again.
Let's go on to another topic that you write extensively about in the book. And you write that Harry and Meghan are, quote, addicted to drama. And you described Harry has described his former life as, quote, a cross between the Truman Show and a zoo. And yet, at many points in the book, you say that you were surprisingly more empathetic towards Harry than you thought you would be. Can you explain that?
Well, I became really very empathetic to Harry when I really dug down into what he'd endured. And I don't mean just the appalling tragedy of the death of his mother, which God knows was a scar and a wound that, you know, he still has not been able to heal, but really how he was tormented by the press for so long. I mean, as an adolescent, he was spied on, he was, you know, stalked, he was hacked, his phone was hacked, his girlfriends, every time he got a relationship, the girls were hounded and stalked and hacked. It was utter misery. He kept losing relationships over it. And of course, even when he joined, you know, he was a very accomplished soldier in the army. And when he served in Afghanistan, in the end, he has to come back before he wants to because the press bust him open. Not the British press, let's just say, actually. That was not the British press. It was an Australian outlet that did that because it was meant to be a blackout and they didn't. But, you know, naturally, he's bitter about it. He feels... And when the press started in on Meghan, it was too much for him to bear. You know, he just felt, I'm not having this happen now to my wife. And I understand that. I mean, you can't help but feel empathetic about that.
And sort of despite their wish for privacy, Harry and Meghan, they still do continue to do media interviews. And just last week, Harry said that he visited the Queen wanting to make sure that his grandmother was protected and, quote, you know, that the right people were around her, end quote.
So that went over like a lead balloon.
It sure did.
I mean,
What
it was
does
like,
that mean?
excuse me, Harry, where were you the last 2 years? As the Queen, you know, had to live alone in the pandemic and her husband, you know, died and you didn't come to the memorial. It's like, now you're saying you're the one who's going to protect her? So there was a lot of outrage about that. I think he was referring probably to Andrew, and who, you know, for the reasons we've discussed. But it was a little bit outrageous that he did that. It is a puzzling thing. I mean, Harry is quite a fascinating quandary at the moment, because it seems like after all these years of being so angry about the exposés of his private life, it seems like he can't sort of stop talking now, you know, which is... maybe it's cathartic for him. Maybe he feels I'm giving my point of view, you know, finally.
The LA sunshine is getting to him.
It's true. Your book poses a question. It's virtually at the end of the book, and it's a really big question for many of us to explore. And you say, how much tarnishing can the crown endure? So will the monarchy survive once the inevitable happens when Her Majesty passes?
There's no doubt, I think, that the halo, you know, the radiance of the monarchy will for sure shrink when she's gone. The global footprint of the monarchy will probably shrink quite a lot when she's gone. But I do think the monarchy will survive, because there's no real desire to end it in the United Kingdom. It stands for national pride, identity, tradition, something that's apart and above the even more tarnished, frankly, political system. I don't think anyone would prefer to have a President Boris Johnson, you know, instead of Her Majesty the Queen, or even His Majesty King Charles III as the head of state. So I don't see it. I don't see the monarchy ending, but I do see its profound, you know, global radiance definitely shrinking.
And what about Harry and Meghan? Do you think we're going to see them on the balcony at the Queen's Jubilee?
Well, actually, I hope they are on the balcony, because I feel this is really a personal celebration of the Queen. It's her last Jubilee, 70 years, which is unbelievable, which is, you know, even more than Queen Victoria. I mean, it's remarkable. I think she's the longest-lived European monarch, if you don't count Louis XIV, who ascended the throne, I think, when he was either 4 or 10, I can't remember which. So it's her birth, you know, it's her official birthday. It's her valedictory, in a sense. And I think that she would want him there on the balcony. It's her family. This is a moment when the Queen loves to be surrounded in family. And actually, you know, people who've been in those balcony moments, you know, who are involved with them, say to me that backstage it's a very warm occasion. It's a very family occasion. And here we all are. It's like a sort of Thanksgiving, you know. It's like, here we all are. Isn't it wonderful to see each other? You know, and I don't think this whole, which is, you know, of the missing Sussexes is what something the Queen would want, actually. So my guess is that they might wind up on that balcony.
We have just scratched the surface. There is so much density to this book, and I wish we could talk to you all day, but you're a busy lady, Tina Brown.
It's fun. I can talk all night. Just press the button.
What an honor to have you here with us today.
Thank you.
And excited to have you with us.
Thank you so much.
Studio.
It's a huge pleasure to be here in Toronto on The Social.
And there it is. It is. Listen, if you want to read the book, please go and grab it. It is called The Palace Papers Inside the House of Windsor, The Truth and the Turmoil. It is a read. You will not be disappointed.